The relentless, rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor was the only sound in the dimly lit ICU room. It was a sound meant to be comforting, a digital lullaby signifying life. But to Dr. Leo Vance, each sterile beep was a hammer strike on the anvil of his conscience. He stood over the patient, not as a healer, but as an executioner waiting for the hour. The patient in bed 4, John Doe, was a mystery. Admitted after a found down in an alley, unresponsive, with strange neurological markers. But Leo knew exactly who he was. The file, memorized and then destroyed, flashed behind his eyes. Target: Eris Thorne. Codename: January. Objective: terminate via medical means. Authorization: Project Goliath. Eris Thorne, his wife's brother. The brilliant, reckless neuroscientist who had vanished 6 months ago. The man who, according to the men in suits who had cornered Leo in the hospital parking garage, had engineered a neurodegenerative prion weapon and was planning to sell it. The evidence was a video. Eris, in a foreign lab, handing a briefcase to faceless figures. An ironclad case for a terminal diagnosis. The order was simple. Make it look natural. An unexpected seizure. A sudden catastrophic stroke. A tragic but explainable end for a John Doe. A simple injection of an untraceable compound that would mimic a massive brain aneurysm. His hand, usually so steady it could thread a catheter into a vein no wider than a thread, trembled as he picked up the syringe. The clear liquid inside looked innocent, like saline. It was anything but. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor sang its steady song. This wasn't medicine. This was murder dressed in a white coat. To push the plunger would be to betray the Hippocratic Oath, his family, and the very essence of who he was. He would be killing the man who taught his son to ride a bike, the man who had donated a kidney to save his own sister's life. But the alternative, the man in the suit had been very clear. Disobedience isn't resignation, doctor. It's a diagnosis. And we have a very specific prognosis for traitors. A fatal one. For you, and sadly, for that lovely family of yours. A home gas leak is such a tragic, common accident. His choice was between being a murderer or a corpse, with his family joining him in either outcome. Beep, beep, beep. The door to the ICU swished open. Nurse Amy Henderson, her face etched with concern, poked her head in. Everything okay, Dr. Vance? You've been in here a while. His stats look stable. Leo's body went rigid. He subtly palmed the deadly syringe, hiding in the folds of his lab coat. Just double-checking his pupillary response, Amy. Still non-reactive. It's puzzling. Yeah, she sighed, stepping fully into the room. She began checking the 4 lines, her movements efficient and gentle. Such a mystery. No ID, nothing. It's always the ones like this that get to you. She adjusted the flow of the legitimate sedative. As she leaned over the bed, her stethoscope brushed against the patient's arm, nudging the thin hospital gown aside. And there it was, a small, faded tattoo on the inner bicep, a design Leo knew intimately. A caduceus, not the traditional symbol of commerce, but the staff of Asclepius, the true symbol of healing, intertwined with a double helix. Eris's tattoo, the one he'd gotten after his first major breakthrough in gene therapy. The one he said represented healing from the inside out. But next to it, fresh and angry looking, was a series of numbers and letters burned into the skin, as if by a laser. C7-31P. A code. A brand. The video evidence they'd shown him. Eris had looked terrified, his eyes darting, his movements jerky. Not like a man making a deal. Like a man under duress. The briefcase could have been anything. The buyers could have been his captors. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor's rhythm seemed to change, to become more urgent. Nurse Henderson followed his gaze. Oh, that. Weird, right? Looks almost surgical. Like a serial number. She said it with a nurse's clinical detachment. But the words hit Leo like a physical blow. A serial number. On his brother-in-law. The puzzle piece snapped into place with terrifying clarity. He wasn't looking at a traitor. He was looking at a living experiment. A subject. Eris hadn't sold a weapon. He was the weapon. Or he was the proof of it. And Project Goliath wasn't eliminating a threat. They were tying up a loose end and destroying the evidence. Amy, Leo said, his voice hoarse. Give me a full toxicology screen. Panels we don't normally run. Heavy metals, rare alkaloids, synthetic prion markers. Stat. And keep this between us. Her eyes widened. Doctor, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a diagnosis, he whispered, his eyes locked on the brand. And I think someone really doesn't want me to find it. Just then, the cardiac monitor let out a sharp, high-pitched alarm. BRRRP, BRRRP, BRRRP. VTACH. Ventricular tachycardia. The heart was racing itself to death. Eris's body began to seizure on the bed, back arching violently against the restraints. Code blue. ICU room 4. Code blue. Amy yelled, slamming her hand on the large red button by the door. The room instantly erupted into a storm of controlled chaos. The code blue alarm blared throughout the ward. Within seconds, the room was flooded with a respiratory therapist, another nurse, and a resident. Leo's training took over. The syringe of death was forgotten in his pocket. He was a doctor again. Start compressions. Give me 300 of amiodarone. Prepare for defib. He grabbed the paddles, charging them. Clear. The body jolted. The chaotic rhythm on the screen flatlined for a heart-stopping second, then snapped back into a weak but stable sinus rhythm. Silence descended, punctuated by heavy breathing. They had him back. But as Leo looked at the steady line on the monitor, a new, more profound horror dawned on him. That wasn't a natural complication. The timing was too perfect. It was a remote trigger. They were activating the weapon inside him. They were demonstrating their control and expediting his death all at once. They weren't waiting for his injection. They had to try to kill Eris themselves. The men in suits weren't just in the parking garage. They were in the hospital. They were watching. They had access to the systems. Maybe they were even on the code team. He looked at the faces around him. The earnest resident. The focused respiratory therapist. Nurse Henderson, her face pale. Any one of them could be an asset. He was trapped in a hospital that had become a hunting ground, and the prey was his patient. The senior resident, Dr. Evans, let out a breath. Good save, team. Let's get him stabilized and down MRI. See what the hell that seizure was about. It was a standard, logical next step. But to Leo, it sounded like a death sentence. An MRI suite was isolated. Easy to control. Easy to stage another tragic complication. No, Leo said, his voice sharper than he intended. All eyes turned to him. No MRI. Not yet. Dr. Evans frowned. Leo, with unexplained neuroactivity like that, protocol is changing, Leo interrupted, his mind racing faster than the patient's heart had been. He needed to buy time. He needed to get Eris to a place they couldn't reach him. There was only one place in the hospital that was a fortress within a fortress, the biocontainment isolation unit on the 10th floor, used for highly infectious diseases. It had its own air filtration, its own power supply, and was accessible only through a series of biometric and keycard locked doors. It was the most secure room in the building. He's displaying symptoms consistent with a novel prion-based presentation, Leo bluffed, layering his lie with just enough medical jargon to sound plausible. Until we rule out airborne transmission, he needs to be in maximum isolation. Prep the BCU. Now, I'll take full responsibility. The team stared at him, stunned, but his tone brooked no argument. They moved, a new tension thrumming in the air. As they began the complex transfer, Leo pulled Nurse Henderson aside. Amy, I need a favor. A big one. Anything, doctor. The brand on his arm. C7-31P. I need to go down to archives. Pull the physical donor logs for the last quarter. Don't search digitally. Look for that code. It might be a donor ID, a sample number, anything. She nodded, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. On it. The journey to the 10th floor was a tense, silent parade. Leo watched everyone, his nerves screaming. Every glance felt like a threat. The BCU was as imposing as he remembered. They suited up in full positive pressure PPE suits, making them look like astronauts, their breaths loud in the enclosed helmets. They sealed Eris inside the sterile, glass-walled room. Alone in the anteroom, just Leo and his sedated patient. The silence was deafening. The only sound was the hiss of his own air supply. He had done it. He had created a temporary fortress. His secure hospital line buzzed. It was the internal number for the chief of staff. He answered, his throat dry. Leo, said the voice on the other end. It wasn't the chief. It was the man from the garage. His handler. His voice was calm, amused. The BCU? Really? A bit dramatic, don't you think? It changes nothing. In fact, it makes things easier. No security cameras in there. Very contained. Leo's blood ran cold. They were everywhere. The objective remains, Doctor. The clock is ticking. Your wife just called the front desk, very worried that she can't reach you. It would be a shame if she decided to come down here to check on you in person. The threat was explicit. Sarah was being drawn into the kill box. Just then, the intercom to the anteroom crackled. It was Nurse Henderson, her voice breathless. Dr. Vance, I found it. In the old physical log for the Prometheus Foundation's charitable tissue and blood donations. C7-31P. It's not an ID number. It's a batch number for an experimental neural growth factor, withdrawn from trials because it caused aggressive prion-like folding in test subjects. Leo's mind made the connection instantly. Prometheus, the shadowy defense contractor that funded half the hospital's research. They hadn't just kidnapped Eris. They had used a front to inject him with their own weaponized compound. They had turned him into a walking, ticking biological weapon. The video was a setup. He was a victim. The handler's voice came back. I see. Your time is up, Doctor. Make the choice. Leo looked through the glass at Eris, no longer a target, but a patient who had been brutally poisoned. He looked at the syringe in his pocket, the tool of his betrayal, and he looked at the complex array of life support and monitoring equipment surrounding the bed. A wild, insane plan formed in his mind. It was a Hail Mary pass using every ounce of his medical knowledge. Okay, Leo said into the phone, his voice sounding defeated. You win. I'll do it. A wise choice, the handler said. But the BCU protocols. I need to log the cause of death as a catastrophic stroke to avoid an automatic infectious disease audit. I need to simulate the readings on the monitor. I need you to disable the remote telemetry for this room for 60 seconds. So the central nurse's station doesn't see the real spike and get suspicious. Can you do that? A pause. He could almost hear the man smirk. Of course. We have control of all systems. You have 60 seconds. Starting now. The light on the main telemetry panel winked out. They were off the grid. Leo didn't reach for the lethal syringe. Instead, his hands flew across the medical console. He slammed the button to induce a therapeutic medical coma, pumping a powerful barbiturate into Eris's fore. Then, he began manually manipulating the EKG readings, creating the violent, chaotic spike of a massive cerebral hemorrhage on the local monitor. It looked horrifyingly real. What are you doing? The handler's voice snapped over the phone. The telemetry is down, but we have a visual feed. That's not the compound. It's a cover, Leo yelled, injecting a massive dose of a powerful diuretic instead. The prion agent causes massive edema. I'm mimicking the symptoms. It has to be believable. He was creating a medical smokescreen, using real drugs to create a fake death. He grabbed a vial of adenosine and injected it, causing a brief, dramatic episode of asystole, a flatline, on the monitor for a full 10 seconds before the heart kicked back in. It was the final act. It's done, Leo gasped, slumping against the console, pouring real sweat inside his suit. He's gone. He could hear a satisfied sigh on the other end. Excellent. A team will be in to collect the body for cremation. Your service is complete. Your family is safe. The line went dead. Leo stood there, trembling. He had just faked his brother-in-law's death on live television for a shadowy intelligence agency. The body collection team would be there any minute. He had maybe 5 minutes. He rushed to Eris's side. The medical coma had dropped his vitals to barely detectable levels. To anyone without a detailed readout, he would appear dead. It was a desperate gambit. The door to the BCU anteroom hissed open. 2 men in CDC uniforms, their faces obscured by hoods and masks, entered with a body bag on a gurney. They didn't speak. They moved with a cold, efficient purpose. Leo's heart hammered. This was it. They would take him, and he would never be seen again. As one of the men reached for Eris, Leo did the only thing he could think of. He pointed to the console. His vitals spiked again right at the end. A final autonomic surge. You might want to bag him quickly. There could be aerosolized particles. The man flinched, his hand jerking back. It was a tiny hesitation, born of a fear he shouldn't have if he were a real CDC agent dealing with a known prion disease. Prion aren't airborne. In that split second, the door to the anteroom burst open again. It was hospital security, followed by the actual chief of staff and Nurse Henderson, who was pointing an accusatory finger. That's them. They're not CDC. I checked. There's no CDC team dispatched to us. Leo had sent her one last message while faking the death. Fake CDC. Get security. Now. Chaos erupted. The two imposters reached for weapons concealed under their jackets. But they were outnumbered and surrounded in the cramped space. As security subdued them, Leo ripped off his helmet, gasping for air. He looked at the chief. Sir, we need to get this patient to a real MRI. Now. And we need to call the FBI and the World Health Organization. We have a weaponized prion agent in play, created by Prometheus. And this man is the proof. The chief's face was a mask of shock and disbelief. But the evidence was overwhelming. The branded man, the fake CDC agents, the manipulated medical data, Leo quickly explained. Later, as a real FBI agent took his statement, Leo looked through the window of the now secure room at Eris, who was being prepared for a true MRI. The wow moment wasn't a car chase or a shootout. It was the horrifying, silent revelation that the battlefield was now the hospital itself. The weapons were viruses and lies. And the heroes were the ones who refused to stop listening to the heartbeat, even when it was telling them a story no one wanted to hear. The real mission, to heal his brother, expose the truth, and protect every future patient from becoming a John Doe, had just begun. And it would be fought not with guns, but with scalpels, syringes, and the unbreakable oath to do no harm. That ending changes everything. The conspiracy is deeper than you think. Subscribe now because the next video reveals the terrifying truth behind Project Goliath. Like this video if you need to know what happens next.